history has shown time and time again, there will be a run to gold like you've never seen ever. As the run to gold happens, the herd mentality will take over, and CNBC will have to report the gold prices going up. They can't ignore it. So once that catches into the consciousness of the society or world at large, I believe this time, there'll be a run to gold, and the people that can't afford gold will do the next best thing, which is a run to silver. And because silver is such a small market and there's less physical available than there is gold, it will take the silver price far higher in percentage terms than the gold price.
Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a returning guest, David Morgan. David is a precious metals aficionado armed with degrees in finance and economics, as well as engineering. David appeared on CNBC, Fox Business, and many other news stations. He's the creator and owner of the Morgan Report. You can see his work on themorganreport.com or go to YouTube and type in the Morgan Report and bring you right over to his YouTube channel. And I am very happy to have David back on the X22 Report Spotlight. David, welcome back to the Spotlight.
Well, Dave, thanks for having me. I really enjoy your interviews.
Hey, thanks for being here again. And I want to start off with the precious metals market. And we're seeing precious metals. It looks like they're being suppressed once again. I mean, we're down in like the 1100 area right now for gold. We're down a little bit for silver. And I wanted to get your take on what is going on. I mean, is the precious metals market, have we hit bottom again? What is going on here?
Well, to try and be consistent, I mean, I said very recently in the last 2 or 3 interviews I've done for the public that we've hit bottom. And yet, as I say that, gold is higher than the recent low, but silver, I think, is hitting a new low today. As we're doing this interview, we're just above 14, like the bid price is $14.10. And I think that's a new low in this last couple of weeks. So, to say this is it is a bit presumptuous. Could be, if you're not going to count every penny and every tick. Again, gold, has been lower than this. Silver, I think, is a new low. But we are in a washout, and I do think that this is it or near it, and that we are going higher by the end of the year. But anytime you try to pick a bottom, it's very, very difficult, especially in a market that has so much control through what we call the quants. And I'm not talking about quantitative easing. I'm talking about the mathematical quants that do this analysis and build these algorithms, because most of the trading now is not done on the trading floor like 20 years ago. It's done through computer to computer networks, basically, and very few human interference or mandate. It's mostly done by machine to machine, believe it or not. So these volumes are extraordinary. The amount of trading is above and beyond what normal trading would take place. And it's all done basically in this technology age.
Now, we see that Russia and China and many other countries, they're either purchasing more gold or repatriating their gold. And they're doing this in a down market, and they just continually buy more and more and more. Now, the U.S., as far as I know, we haven't been purchasing any gold whatsoever. Why do you think these countries are continually purchasing gold if gold is just a barbarous relic? I mean, why are they so busy accumulating so much gold, and why do countries want their gold back as the price continually drops?
Well, I think that one's pretty easy. Anyone that, follows monetary history knows that gold has been money for thousands of years, and every currency has fallen by the wayside. So to say the dollar won't is a rather ridiculous statement in my view, especially if you look at the 1913 dollar and what the Federal Reserve Board says it is worth relative to 100 years ago. And it's basically worth 2.5 cents or so. So it's failed by roughly 97, 98% relative to where it was started. So there's 2 things going on here. One, both Russia and China continue to build their gold inventory because it's a lasting asset. It really is money. As JP Morgan said, gold is money and everything else is credit. And of course, the reverse side of credit is debt. So we have an overabundance of debt. We have under appreciation for gold outside of the BRICS, and they are quietly buying year over year. I think it's either an insurance policy that when the system fails or resets or moves to the SDR, take any of those ors, it doesn't really matter because gold will be the basis of a sound economic system internally, not necessarily externally. And what I just said is gold may enter the new monetary system on a global basis, and it may not. I don't know. But what I do know is that it will factor into the wealth of nations, as it always has.
And do you think, from your research and everything, has the U.S. purchased any new gold or gotten some gold back at all?
No. No, in fact, most of the substantial preponderance of evidence, although most of it is not hard fact, points to the idea that the United States has encumbered the gold that the Treasury claims that it has. The Treasury has probably hypothecated this either in a number of ways. It could have loaned it, it could have leased it, it could have lent it, it could have swapped it. There's many ways that that gold pool has probably been drained or at least encumbered. And this is why you haven't seen an audit since the early 1950s of the total gold supply, brick by brick, number by number, pound by pound, and assayed to be 999 fine. It's rumored, and I trust this rumor to be true, but I will say it's a rumor that a lot of the bricks that are purportedly in the United States Treasury are coin melt and not 999 fine. In other words, they're not good delivery bars against what you would find in the COMEX or the LBMA.
Now, I wanted to get your take on this. So we just mentioned that Russia, China, and many other countries have been purchasing or repatriating their gold. The U.S. might not even have gold, and you said they're using gold as an insurance policy just in case or when the system breaks down. Now, when the system does break down, if the United States is not holding the gold or is holding the coin melt and it's not 99999, what happens here in the United States? I mean, what effect will that have on the currency, on what the way our lives are today in this country if we don't have this insurance policy?
I'm going to answer that two ways, Dave, and I'm not trying to be funny here, but if you would have asked me 5 years ago that exact question, I would answer this way. I would say that once the truth is out, that would have a profound effect on the US dollar, and you'd probably see it crash. However, I've changed my opinion, and here it is now. I think that the people of the United States and perhaps world, but primarily in the Western Anglo-American Empire, that means Western Europe and the US, Canada, have been so brainwashed that if it were to come out that the gold pool is a farce, as the US doesn't own this, that it might be a ho-hum moment, nothing would happen, or basically nothing. You might see like a huge rally in gold for like 3 days or a week, and then it'd blow off and it wouldn't carry through. I truly think that it's more important now to control the cognitive map, the way people think about money, than it is to actually know that it is or it isn't real. I mean, if you go to absolutes, it's the absolute truth. Is it true or is it false? And it turns out to be false. There is no gold for, let's just say none for a metaphor. They might have some, but let's say the amount that they have is pitifully small relative to what they claim. If that's the absolute truth, I used to think that would have a profound impact on it, on the economics and on the monetary system. I no longer believe that. I now believe that there is the possibility, and a strong one, that the powers that be have so inundated people that, you know, this digital wealth, this on your phone, it doesn't matter. It's a legal thing. It's not a physical thing, on, that it may be a ho-hum. Again, if it were brought to the fore, again, I think you probably get a strong rally from the gold bugs and maybe some banks and maybe the BRICS, but it could just be a popcorn rally. On the other hand, I don't want to be too one way on this. I'm open-minded about it, and I still think that there is a great move in the metals ahead of us, but I'm not sure what will be the trigger exactly. I don't think anyone can know that.
All right, let me take this to the next step here. If countries found out that we really don't have the gold, how will that affect the United States?
Well, again, on a global basis, on a nation-state to nation-state basis, I think it'd be rather profound, which means that even though everyone pretty much poo-poos gold in the mainstream financial press, as we just have stated over and over, and you've done it on numerous interviews besides me, that the real money is gold, and that the BRICS basically are taking in gold slowly, surely, building their reserves. I mean, as Jim Rickard said recently, if you look at a decade of Russia, you've gone from 600 million to 2,000 tons of gold. And this is profound over a decade. So from a nation state banking perspective or a global banking perspective, I think it could crash the dollar on that basis. And I don't want to disregard what I just said. So let me kind of reframe it, if I might. You could have where the gold ratio to the US dollar is much less than most people believe. When that fact is known, it'll have an international effect on the dollar and probably put the dollar way down. However, and I've thought of this and many others, that we could have what's called a two-tiered dollar, where the dumbest Americanus, and I'm an American, so I just call myself dumb. I don't want to get in a match of, me being, what you call it, trolling or anything. The point is that you could have a two-tier dollar system. So you have an international dollar where the dollar is worth a lot less in international trade. And at the same time, you could have the dollar internal where you get an inflation or close to a hyperinflationary environment where the American people have to use it. So let me state it very, very fundamentally. You could have a dollar tied to gold that's only that is required to move international goods. So the only way, like these trade tariffs and all that's going on right now, well, just put that to the side and start a new column and put it gold only. And in the gold only column, all international trade is based on gold. And the U.S. has a lot less than it claims. So what would their trade power be? It'd be very low. At the same time, you would have all this paper coming back in the United States internationally to swap it for something of value, real value. So you could have a real bad situation, and yet the psychology could be, as I said earlier, where the Americans at large, not from channels like yours or mine, but the vast majority that watch the mainstream financial press don't have a clue what's going on and don't know that gold has anything to do with it. Have I made myself clear on that?
Yes, you have. I wanted to change topics to silver now, and I just wanted to talk about what is happening with silver. I know we mentioned it, in the beginning of this, but I wanted to get your take on what J.P. Morgan is doing right now. And it seems like they have more silver bullion in their warehouse than the 1980 Hunt brothers and the 1998 Berkshire Hathaway did back then. So why do they have so much silver on hand? What are they planning for?
Well, this is a very bit of a touchy subject, but certainly I don't really shy away from any direct questions. So I know that, there are analysts out there that claim that JP Morgan has an extraordinary large amount of silver. And the first issue I would have with that, well, the first thing is let's talk facts, because I like facts, and facts kind of speak for themselves. So I'm on the public domain warehouse receipt website, and it shows all the approved depositories for silver that are currently aligned with what the requirements are for the Commodities Exchange. And those include Brinks, CNT, which is Coins and Things, large one, Delaware Depository, which I've personally visited and been through the whole facility, HSBC, International Depository of Delaware, JP Morgan, Loomis International, Maca Amit, and Scotia Makata. So those are all of them, and they have increased the amount. There used to be about 5, and now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I guess. Now, on JP Morgan, it has, as we speak, 145,408,089.92 ounces of 999 fine silver. And there are 2 categories for that total. One category is registered and one category is eligible. The eligible category is by far the lion's share of that amount, and that's 140,286,027 ounces. The other category is registered, which is a measly, really small relative to the other COMEX depositories, 5,122,000 ounces of silver. What's interesting, and most people don't know this, is that the eligible category cannot be touched by JP Morgan for all practical purposes, because this is long-term investors that own it that have to sign the back of the receipt in order to move it into the registered category, because the registered category is the only category that can deliver metal off the exchange. So basically, it's just allowing JP Morgan to safeguard your silver. So that's by far the most. Now, JP Morgan technically could have some eligible silver, but it certainly wouldn't be the 140 million ounces. So really, all we know for a fact is that they own 5 million ounces. Now, could they own more? Absolutely. Could they own 600 million ounces? Possibly, or 700 or 750, possibly. The problem I have with that idea is that sitting next to Eric Sprott in Toronto in his office with 6 other people when he started the PSLV, and I was sitting to his right, he asked me if I thought we should have the PSLV blue skied for Canadians only, or should they take the extra time and get it blue skied in the United States? And I told them, without a doubt, you need it blue skied in the United States, in my strong opinion, which is what they did. When it was gone through the process and available, the original purchase was something along 22 million ounces. And that moved the silver market a rather significant amount in percentage terms. And it took a long time for delivery relative to what the dealers stated. In fact, I distinctly remember at the time, Scotia had indicated, from what Eric told me, so this is hearsay, that they could supply the silver required. And at that time, they had less than 22 million ounces total, not counting the registered and the eligible category. And as I'm doing this, and hopefully I'm not confusing anyone, I know it's, unless you understand this stuff and study it, it may be a bit confusing. I'm trying to be very clear about it. Right now, the total amount of Scotia Makata is 22 million ounces, just interestingly, coincidence. And the registered is 14 million, so that's almost 3 times as much available in their dealership than JP Morgan has. And the eligible category is only 8 million. But in other words, it would wipe out Scotia's ability to deliver 22 million ounces, even if they stole it from the eligible category. So I showed that to Eric, and he got all the bars, and some were a little bit late, but they were smelted and stamped later than the contract's date. In other words, they were supposed to be delivered by such and such a date, and some of them, not all of them, a few of them came in after that date. So if it was that difficult to deliver at that time, does that mean it's that difficult to deliver now? And the answer is not necessarily. There's been a lot more silver production over the last several years than there has been previously, and I get that. I have a hard time understanding that you can have it both ways. Certainly, I understand the paper paradigm probably as well as most people. However, any physical buying that's substantial will move the market because it has to come to the market. In other words, you cannot take a piece of paper if you're demanding physical. So it is possible, I suppose, to keep such a hammer down on the price that you're able to get some quantity. But it's been my experience, every time the quantity is significant enough, in the example I just gave, it will tend to move the price up in the spot market, not necessarily in the futures market, but in what's called the spot market or delivery month. And so you would, in my view, have to see some of this, what's called backwardation, that would be substantial, which means to get 20 million ounces. So let me just do a little quick math. So if you're looking at, let's say 600 million ounces over 5 years, you're looking at 120 million ounces in a given year. And that's roughly 10 million ounces a month if you did it perfectly month to month. That much delivery without moving the market's possible, but highly unlikely, because the whole paper paradigm is just that. It's usually almost always settled in fiat, in cash. It's not settled in physical. So I have a little bit of a problem with that. I also have a problem with, if you're going to use the data that is provided by the CFTC and go along with what I just showed you, then it's, I think you have to question whether or not all that data is good, or is it not? In other words, if your whole argument is based on everything that comes off of the commitment of traders reports, and then you say, I trust the commitment of traders and this is what's happening, but at the same time you say, well, I don't believe what's on, well, I should rephrase it, but what's shown in the report I just read, which is the only factual evidence that either party can produce, at least to my knowledge, leads to the question of, well, why do you trust part of the official record and not the other part? So there's a discontinuity to my thinking, but I want the people listening to make up their own mind on what it means to them, because you can, that's my opinion, but take it with 2 cents. I don't care, but it is an opinion. So I think it'd be hard to move. The other part is the idea of taking coin melt. And that is possible, I think, and I've talked to many people, some of them are actually on this list that I just read. In other words, I'm not talking about some coin dealer at some shop in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm talking about someone that's on this list I just read. In fact, a couple of them to be exact. What their idea would be, and most of them thought that it would be ridiculous to take something that had already let's say $1.50 to $2 premium and melt it down to lose that premium, put it into a commercial bar. And I'm not saying it couldn't be done. Certainly it could. Would it be done is really the question. And if it were done, what would be the repercussions? And one would be that there would be a amount of coin that would not be very readily available to the market. And the coin collectors would discover this pretty easily. In other words, if you were in the retail market and you were buying silver in relatively modest size, and there was a shortage of a given year because half of that whole year's coinage had been melted and taken away, and now only half the amount exists, that would show up sooner or later, and the dealers would become aware of it. But basically the opposite has happened, which means that the premiums have gone down. And that only happens when there's basically no sales or an abundance of a particular item. So none of this adds up completely. I certainly want to be as objective as I possibly can, because I think that's the best. I'm not trying to pose an argument here. I am doing what you asked. What is my take on this whole situation? Could you move silver off of the SLV? Absolutely. Could you move silver out of the warehouses on the COMEX? Absolutely. Could you do it in the quantities that were outlined and not get some indication in the market price itself? Highly doubtful.
Let's move on to the economy here. And I wanted to get your take on what the central bank is doing right now. They're talking about raising the interest rates once again. They're unwinding right now. And everything that you've been looking at in the economy, is what they're doing going to benefit the people, the economy? I mean, why are they raising interest rates right now? Is that going to benefit anything here?
No, I'm going to digress a bit, but I think it'll answer the question sufficiently. This is from the Silver Manifesto. Okay. And it's chapter 9 called The Debt Bomb. And this is what we're talking about, the interest rate on this debt. And this is a quote: "The West cannot solve its problems, hardly properly described as a financial crisis anymore, under the current framework bound to the fiat paper currencies. The global monetary war is heating up notably. The heavy liquidity has caused unfiscal distortions in every conceivable bond market niche. The new and better debt devices have been exposed for their shams. The leading central bankers lost their credibility long ago. The weakness is as broad as it is deep. A reliance upon paper wealth and paper structures and paper contracts during a time of zero bond interest rates and unfettered hyper-monetary inflation to cover its debts. Almost no foreign U.S. Treasury bond buyers exist anymore. The U.S. has become Weimar America, a fascist enclave, end quote. And that's from Jim Willey. So I don't think it matters at this point if interest rates go up or down. I mean, it matters somewhat as far as what will the market's reaction will be. And there will be reaction. But I think the game really has been lost. It just hasn't. You haven't got to the end bell of the wrestling match. You haven't got to the last out of the ninth inning, but the game is already lost. So what I mean by that is there might be, as the baseball metaphor, a few, pinch hits and someone bunts and another base is stolen and that kind of thing. There's excitement in the markets, but the game is lost. You're not going to make up the 17 runs behind that the other team is ahead. And once the market recognizes that the game is lost, this is where there is a chance that the banking system actually loses some control. Now, history shows that these bankers, whatever era we're talking about, seldom lose control. I know you've done a lot on the X22 and talked about Andrew Jackson. In fact, I went on that theme myself here recently on Caravan to Midnight with John B. Wells and what that could mean. But seldom do they lose, but they have in the past. So this is something I think, Dave, that you're going to have to watch, or all of us are going to have to watch. But don't let the excitement of the pinch hit and the bunts and the stolen bases distract you from what I just read. Interest rates will be meaningful, but the game is actually lost. And when that's recognized, it's very difficult to determine what will happen. But history has shown time and time again, there will be a run to gold like you've never seen ever.
And what about the silver?
There will be, because it'll be an adjunct. As the run to gold happens, even people that have never listened to an X22 report, that have no idea what's going on, the herd mentality will take over. And CNBC will have to report the gold prices going up. They can't ignore it. So once that catches into the consciousness of the society or world at large, I believe this time, there'll be a run to gold, and the people that can't afford gold will do the next best thing, which is a run to silver. And because silver is such a small market and there's less physical available than there is gold, it will take the silver price far higher in percentage terms than the gold price.
Now, you're talking about when the entire system starts to implode.
Yeah, I'm talking about that shift in consciousness where people that don't even know why gold keeps going up and making new highs every day, but they get scared, or then they get educated very quickly. Like, well, paper money fails. Paper money fails. What does that mean? It means you're going to have to pay more and more for that Starbucks coffee every week. What? Oh, well, what do I do? Well, you'll do what the herd's doing, which isn't just gold and silver. Although those will be the primary outlets. It could be, buying real estate or whatever. There'll be lots of seeking of an asset. And in the really hard times, look at Venezuela or Brazil or Argentina. You'd rather own 12 jars of peanut butter than the currency. It could get to that level. Is it going to? I don't know. And the other part about gold and silver, which no one ever really talks about, is there is a presupposition here. And that is that the financial system at large pretty much clings together in the foundational elements. In other words, people are still willing to use the currency at some level or the new currency. And the fact of going to complete barter, that's a total breakdown. And I don't necessarily see that, I don't want any of this stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, after 40 years of looking in this deeper and deeper and deeper, as far as I can tell, it's absolutely inevitable. How it actually unravels and to what degree it unravels, no one can really say. And it will be not uniform across the board. In other words, some places will not be nearly as affected as other places.
So will people actually trade silver and gold when they're trying to purchase silver and gold? Will it get to the point where, they're going to actually use the silver and gold, or they're just going to keep it as an insurance policy?
Well, again, on a case-by-case basis, there'll be some interaction with physical metal, but I doubt it'll be done ubiquitous. I doubt it will be that prevalent at all. It will mostly be the fiat as it's dying or fiat equivalent. There will be some very savvy people that will use gold and or silver on a contract basis. For example, my plan personally, and this is a plan, doesn't mean it's absolutely going to happen, but let's just say that land is really relatively cheap relative to an overvalued gold price. You could write a gold contract and be totally within the law and say, I'm giving you X amount of gold per month for the next 5 years to buy this tract of land from you. That would be a binding contract, and away you go. So certainly there will be people that will do things like that, but this is for people that really think outside the box. And Dave, as you and I both know from, our Twitter feeds and everything else, there aren't that many people that will be that sophisticated to do those type of contracts. There will be some back and forth, but no, let me answer it a bit different way. David, do you see a breakdown that's so great that they'll be bartering, gold and silver coins? The answer is no, I don't see that. I do see some exchange taking place because it only makes sense. I mean, it'll be the free market. It'll be called the black market. It'll be called those nasty speculators. There'll be all kinds of negative terminology surrounding that from the mainstream financial press, even if they're believed at that point, which is possible that they're not. It could be that the mass public actually wakes up during this crisis and sees it for what it really is, and do see the emperor having no clothes, and do understand in a flash that things are not actually what they have been told for such a long time. And there's a mass, let's say, consciousness of an awakening of the lies that have been carried out throughout the financial system since this whole corrupt system was founded. That's a possibility, but is it a reality? I don't know. Time will tell.
So if you're not going to trade gold and silver, and for those people who are, just learning about gold and silver, why would you even hold it? What would be the purpose then?
Well, you want it to make another purchase, basically, like I outlined. I mean, what you want to do is sell what's dear and buy what isn't. So when everyone wants it, like the old, I'll digress to my age, Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack. I mean, he's got a cell phone before they actually existed on his golf bag, and he picks it up and says, everybody's buying, sell, everybody's selling, buy. So what that means is when gold is, instead of buying a men's suit, it buys a men's warehouse. You would be far smarter to take that gold and buy the men's warehouse and own the store of suits. I mean, that's definitely overvalued. So you would take your overvalued gold and spend it, use it, or reinvest it. I'm not saying to hold it all the way up and all the way down, but a lot of people will. But no, what you want to do is you want to utilize it for what it is. It's an asset. When that asset becomes overvalued, you want to look for other assets that you want that are undervalued and will help you. You buy businesses, you could buy land, you could buy education, you could pay off debt, you could make your own loans, you could become your own bank, you could set up, and I'd be a little careful with what I'm saying here, but you could do some type of a loan situation as long as you're adhering to your state laws. But certainly, like any pawn shop, will take your gold and give you like 50% of the value and hawk it, and then you have to come up with the cash and pay them back in fiat to get your own gold back. But you could set up something along those lines. So there's lots of elements, and I can't think of them all, that would be what people, from my determination, could, would, or should do with an overvalued asset, be it gold, silver, or, toothpicks. I mean, you really want to take adherence to why you bought this. You bought it to not only maintain your wealth, but in a lot of instances, where we are peaking, you have substantially increased your wealth. But you've got to take the time to reevaluate what it is and what it means and what real wealth is. Because wealth is everything that's out there that you can touch of real value. It's not a stack of gold coins. I mean, certainly that's wealth in the sense of it's something real, but it does vary in value. Sometimes it's undervalued like now. Sometimes it's fair valued, which would be a paper equivalent in today's paper terms of probably 5,000 to 10,000 an ounce in U.S. fiat terms. And if it goes beyond that point, I would consider it to be overvalued, and you're going to have to make a determination of what to do with it. But certainly I wouldn't advocate, why are we holding it? Well, we're holding it because we want to improve our lifestyles. We want to maintain our ability to not only keep our lifestyles, perhaps build a legacy, perhaps, if things go crazy in the silver market, I will start a foundation, and and it's already in the works. It's kind of a thought experiment. I've started some of the paperwork, but I'll build a foundation for free market economic thought. and put some of my money to work to build a foundation so other people could contribute their intellectual ideas to this and, to help along the real idea of what makes a good, strong economy for everybody, everywhere, at all times. And that, of course, is truth. We have to be truthful with all of our dealings, especially our financial dealings.
David, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people see your work?
Dave, I'm doing something here that I'm going to do an experiment, so it should work. I just set this thing up, and I'm trying to get to it. But it's called, if you go to Google and type in Ask David Morgan, you have to use the word ask, A-S-K, Ask David Morgan. It will bring you to a landing page. You'll see my not-so-handsome face on there, and you'll be able to ask me a question. And this is without being a paid member, which I do for my paid members. My paid members get to ask me 2 questions every month, and I guarantee that I'll answer them. But I'm just going to do it for your listeners right now to see how this works. And, no charge, nothing. Just go ahead and get to Ask David Morgan, test it out for me. It's a beta test, see how it works, and I'll be happy to do that for everyone.
Great. I'll put that link at the bottom of the video. David, once again, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.